Hello everyone and welcome to McKween Day 1. For this video series, I will be following the McKween prompt board, and I will be at least doing one prompt from this board in each video. However, some videos like today's will have some bonus art. Today's bonus art will be a character design and a traditional piece, so stay tuned for that. But for the most part, I am taking my time with posting for McKween, and will do as many as I want or have time for. Before I get into the video, if you haven't seen the trailer for the McKween event and character swap, please go watch it. You have the chance to win my Halloween YCH bundle, and you get the chance to win a character, so go watch. Now let's get into the first drawing for today. Alright, onto our first design of McKween. I'm calling this year's McKween designs our Hollow designs. I also made a board to guide our path. I won't be doing every prompt on this board, and we may not even follow it some days, but I thought it would be good to guide us when I don't know what designs to do. So if I have no preconceived ideas for a character, I will just refer to the prompt board. If you want to use this prompt board for yourself, please do so. I will be posting a link to the prompt board in the description. It will be on Toy House in my art portfolio. You can also find all my other prompt boards there as well, and even future ones. Sometimes I like to make prompt boards in advance. I have a few for 2026. If you, want to schedule that in your calendar, save it there, be my guest. Also, thank you to the people who submitted some emojis in our Discord server. I like to use audience input rather than a random emoji generator. I feel like it just makes it all the more fun, plus I do get better combinations. I also did save the ones I didn't use in a folder, so maybe I could just make a emoji board for the future, or use them in future Halloween boards or whatever. If you want to join the Discord, there is a link in the description. It's labeled as McKween Twins Discord server. Anyway, enough talking. Let's get on to the design. Our first prompt for our Hollow designs is blood. This is such a Katie prompt, especially since I even have a mini-me dedicated to the concept. Her name is Key, and will most likely be this character's mini-me link. Now, after scrolling through all of my characters, I really thought I had more characters with blood being a primary theme, but to my surprise, I was wrong. The only other characters besides Key was Xzander and maybe Josiah. Xzander is a design we did together. I'll put his video playlist in the description and in the card, but that was honestly really surprising. However, I do have a lot of characters where blood is a smaller theme in their characteristics or traits. I even asked Chrissy if she could think of any of my characters that had blood as a primary design, and she said Dark. Dark's a blood character if you really think about it, which I find quite funny because it's kind of true. But I am glad today we can add to the blood category of my catalog. Maybe this could lead to making more blood-themed characters. I could use some new additions to the Royal Red location in my toy house. I personally also just love the theme of blood. That is probably pretty well known. Now, for Josiah being our other blood-themed character, and the reason I said it was a maybe is because I'm not for sure if it counts as a primary theme. I feel like the blood theme for him is almost an in-between, where it can be utilized to be the primary theme, but it can also act more as a secondary. But the reason I bring up Josiah is because he was actually a source of inspiration for this design we're making today. Now, we actually did make Josiah together on my channel, and he was an emoji designed character. I will put his video playlist link in the description and in the card. But his emojis were deer, spider, and blood. That's why I remembered him when I got this prompt, and also because he is one of my all-time favorite male designs. I have since even put him in my sketchbook, which is a big honor for my characters when they get an art piece like this. Katie doesn't always like to work in her sketchbook, let alone make a fully finished piece that even used painting with acrylic inks or using colored pencils. I don't like work sometimes, but I especially don't like painting or colored pencils. However, this page has pushed me a little closer to liking it. But I suppose that is another story for another sketchbook entry. Anyway, Josiah's design was my big inspiration for this character. I wanted them to be related. I wanted their plots to coincide with each other and even be in conflict at times. So they must look somewhat similar and passable as being related. So to do this, this new character will definitely need to be a deer. That is the most obvious choice, but I also want him to have a stronger build like Josiah, but to keep them different, he will be more slim and maybe even taller or shorter. Sometimes I don't like to pick height differences until drawing them together. I like to change my mind a lot on heights, at least for characters that aren't a specific unique height. Like, obviously a character like Crater would be taller than me, and a character like Lucinda would be shorter. That just writes itself. But for Josiah and this character, one of them will be taller, one of them will be shorter. I think I'm leaning towards this new character being taller and Josiah shorter. But I do want this newer character to be a slimmer, bulkier build, and Josiah's a bulky, chunky build. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, for including the prompt, I want blood to clearly be a primary theme. So a good way of doing this is making his hair made of blood. I also can take it as an opportunity to make another male character with longer hair, and even give this specific character a bun and a small ponytail at the end of his hair. A big goal of mine recently with my male characters is making more hair variety, so this character is no exception. Originally, before I thought of relating this character to Josiah, I had played with the idea of a Cyclops character, but that clearly wasn't going to be the route I took. However, because I did want to do a unique eye set, I thought giving him a middle eye would be cool. This also helped influence the patterns on his skin, but we can talk about that once we get there. For his clothes, I went down the route of more skin is better. I do this a lot with my male characters. Many of my men just have no shirts. I swear I don't do this for weird reasons. I just don't know male fashion. Unless it's like male feminine, then I can kind of do that. But I also just like drawing the anatomy, even if sometimes I'm not good at it, which is kind of all the time. But for this character, I thought cloths wrapping around him would be cool, and I feel like it even ties into the blood theme, because it almost resembles something like bandages. I also think it ties into his personality of just not caring what other people think, and also maybe adding to his pride, but regal nature. I also just think if you have a bulky or buff character, or a character where one of the key traits of them is their build, you just don't want to clutter the design with an outfit that prevents you from noticing that trait. I want this character to be seen as a buff, slim character, and adding bulky clothes would not help. For Josiah, he is actually one of the few buff characters I have that has a shirt, and that is because his shirt is very form-fitting, and it also adds to his reserved nature, giving him a long sleeve and a turtleneck. For a character like Crater, I didn't give him a shirt because his big shoulders and small waist is one of his key traits, and he also like towers over people, so I feel like him not having a shirt kind of adds to that like odd nature, like he's a bit of an oddball. Now for an opposite example, we can look at my mini-me Cupid. One of the traits of her character is being a overly plus-sized drama queen, so to match that, she has a way more revealing outfit, and it also adds to her seductive and lustful personality. And the last example I will mention is my mini-me Suffocate. Suffocate is a masculine mini-me and is one of very few. To show that she is masculine, I cut a part of her shirt to show a more masculine chest. I'm explaining all this to make sure that you can understand that when making a design, you don't want to cover the things you want to convey, even if it comes at the expense of people thinking your character may be weird like my mini-me's. And clothes has a big effect on how your character is read or portrayed in other people's minds. So be creative with the clothing options you have and make sure it conveys that person's personality and what you want to convey. A few of my favorite features of this design are the horns. I love how it holds his hair. That is one of my favorite ways of utilizing horns. There are so many cool hair combinations you could do with horns, and that's just really fun and cool, and figuring out how to design it and do combinations. It's just a really good time. Honestly, even if you haven't tried a good horn and hair combination, try it. It's fun, especially with like bangs. I love drawing his hoof hands. That is one of the hands I love adding to designs and drawing for characters. It's just a fun way of making a character more unique, even if it's not like a goat or a deer. Just slapping it onto a character and seeing how it looks is always fun. And it gives a different hand type to my character catalog. That also goes for hooves on the feet. That is also just a fun and unique thing to add to a character. I will say, I do love the line art for this drawing. It's just solid. I did spend kind of a ridiculous amount of time on this character, way more than usual, probably, I think it was like 3 hours. But since I like it, it's worth it in the end. Now for this color palette, I did start out with Josiah's palette and then shifted the colors from there, so we did have a good starting point. Now let me dive into this character's plot concept, so have your listening ears on. This character will live in the location called the Spook Suburb. He will be a son to the ruler of this location. He will also be the swordsman for this ruler, and will also almost act like their special card agent for many things. Josiah will also be the son to this ruler, but coming from a different mother than this character. The ruler will dislike Josiah, and one day this character will have to make a decision that's either following the hard, good path with his brother Josiah, or following the easy, evil path with his father in the kingdom. So it's just a concept. I don't have all the details quite yet, but that will be the premise of the plot. I don't think it's anything groundbreaking, but I do like the idea. Now, something that will be unique to his swordsman trait is that blood aspect. His whole body will be made of blood except his internal organs, teeth, and eyes. His skin, hair, ears are blood. So when he gets hit on his skin, it's really just blood. So nothing happens. But if he is stabbed through the chest, his heart and internal organs could be damaged, and that is how he could be hurt or die. But his blood, skin, is magical, so it'll feel and look like normal skin, but will be more like hardened blood. For the most part, he cannot morph into different shapes like a slime character, but he could get out of handcuffs by changing his wrist shape or shrinking his hands a bit, but he cannot change his core shape. His middle eye is also magical. It allows him to see the potential paths of others, like in duel or fights or whatever. Almost like future visions, but it's bits and pieces and many different options, so he has to put that together and make sense of it all. However, it is a skill that he gets better with over time, so when he first gets the powers, it's kind of hard, but over time he gets better and better. When it comes to these powers, he will not be born with them. Since the ruler of the Spook Suburb has more than one son, this character's mother takes it upon herself to set out her son above the rest. So she makes a very dangerous deal with my character, Kazmara, to give her son those powers. Dealing with Kazmara is very dangerous. If you get on her bad side, you will not make it out of her cave alive. If you please her, she will grant you a request, but it's rare, and you often have to have something good to trade with her. In the end, this character will get their powers when they are a baby, but at what cost? I also used the eye trait as a theme on the skin. I thought it looked pretty cool and made it more clear that that was an intentional feature for this character. This character definitely took a while to really understand which tones of red I liked best. I played around with a lot of things. I was even debating the smallest of tonal shifts and really put a lot of thought into making sure the reds were balanced and clear, not overlapping each other, which is very important in character design. I love that every color is consistent through the whole design. I think I did a wonderful job with this cutie. Now, before I start, about the prompts, if you don't feel like taking it to a literal or specific sense, like the definition, or you just get a vibe or energy from a prompt, that is just as valid. If you get the prompt of peaking and you think of something more like the energy of the word, that's totally fine. I think that's great. Anyway, now as you can tell, the quality of the video isn't great. I'm using my phone. It's just what I have, and I will be making that work the best way I can. I also forgot to hit record a few times, so if it randomly gets a chunk done or cuts in and out, that's my bad. I'm just working with what I got, I'll be honest. And I want to encourage myself to do sketchbook work, even if it's not the most professional setup. It is what it is. Anyway, again, the prompt is peeking, and I thought it would be cool to have a zipper on a lady's chest with eyes poking through, and it's kind of shadowy in there, which led me to designing a mutant type character, because of course I did. This is Drawtober. Of course I'm gonna love to draw some mutants. She will have extra set of arms on the waist that will be controlled by the shadow in her. I also thought adding stitches would be fun, so she will be like a zombie. And of course, to make it even more mutant-y, I'm going to give her 3 eyes. I love a good spooky and cute mutant design, so I'm very, very happy to draw this. I feel like this is a very typical KateKruzan page. Very expected of me. When it comes to coloring this page, I am using acrylic ink and paint to get the base color down. I have really been enjoying the process of painting, which is actually very fun. Painting wasn't always very fun for me, so this is very nice that, like, I don't know, I've matured and it's enjoyable. It's definitely a process though. Digitally coloring is technically easier, I guess, but there is something very rewarding about a sketchbook page being fully colored. I should say the black paint I'm using is actually not acrylic. It is more of a, you know, let me grab it. What is it? I don't remember what it's called. It doesn't really say what kind of paint it is, does it? It's just craft paint, but it dries really matte and it absorbs light really well. I love using this for drawings. I love that it looks so, it's just such like a deep shade of black that it's just really good. I prefer using matte black paint than like a normal acrylic black paint. I like having like different energies for different colors. I don't know. I really like it. There's something about it. It's just good. I think what I like about that black paint most is it really takes colored pencil over it really well. The acrylic paint, it will, but it's not as good as that matte paint. So maybe it's just apple barrel. I'm like sure most people know what that paint is, and that paint's not known for being like great. But like when you're me and you're using stuff over it, it works really well for, I don't know, maybe I should just order some in bulk or something and get a bunch of colors and test it out with that and see if I like it more than like this acrylic paint, because I guarantee you it's probably cheaper. The colors I am picking are greens, blue, and red accents. I thought green would look good with a red background. That's mainly why I picked it. And it also fit the zombie theme, so why not? That also justified my choice. And the light blue, I just really thought it looked pretty with those greens. There was something about it. I liked the contrast. I left the darker green on the drawing, or on the painting, I guess, a little streaky on the page to leave a bit of subtle texture, which when we shade the paint with colored pencils, it will leave a texture on the page as well that the camera doesn't pick up. So it's really only a detail you will notice in person, but it's still subtle. So when I lay down the paint, it'll like have brush strokes in it that you can't see, but when you add the colored pencil, it like, have you ever done like a stencil, not a stencil, but like those, you take like a leaf and then you put a crayon over it? It kind of gives an effect like that. You can only really see it in person if you look like closely. I don't think the camera will be able to pick it up, but it will have a nice texture. Something I really like about the colors is how the blue just pops on that dark green. I like that the green and the black are the darkest colors and that blue is the lighter one. Honey, you okay? That was my guinea pig, I'm sorry. Where was I? Oh yeah. Oh, for the colors, I also only mixed the light blue and the light green. I try not to mix paints because I absolutely don't enjoy it. It makes me feel yucky. I will be taking no further questions. However, the light green color is so yummy. I mixed it very well. It's almost like a yellow as well, especially with all the other colors like surrounding the page. It makes it look even more yellow to the eye. I also did put a few drops of yellow in ink to make it that way, so like that adds up. Sometimes the acrylic inks and paints don't mix well, but if you mix it enough, it works most of the time. Now, at this point in the drawing, I was looking at it, or I guess the painting, I keep saying drawing. I guess it's technically a painting. But at this point in the painting, I looked at it in the red balance, and I'm like, I don't like the fact that there's only red in the eyes. I just didn't like that, so I eventually add a red lip. And I also give her red nails, which I feel like was a perfect way to tie in all of the colors, or all of the the red, because it'll give it a good balance. So that's what I ended up doing. I also, the hands are a little wonky on this painting, I will say that. Just a little wonky, but I'm alright with them. I'll be honest, they're fine. I don't really care. For the lining, I am just using a ballpoint pen, and I have to be sure not to smudge it. So what I do is fold a piece of paper in half and rest my hand on it. That way I don't smudge it and the oils from my hands don't get on my drawing. I also like to cover the left page on my sketchbook so I can rest my hand there and not get oils on that painting. Even though it's sealed, like I've sealed it with sealant, it's fine. I really try to use paper to make sure. I'm not saying my hands are greasy, dirty, and oily and nasty. They're not. I wash my hands. But just in case there's some grime on it, I don't want it messing up my drawing. I'll also do this when I do the shading and stuff like that. It's just really helpful. And also make sure you're using the same side of the paper down. That way you don't like just put your hand on this paper all day and get oil on it and then flip it onto your sketchbook. Do you know what I mean? Like that. That'd be so silly. At first, when I was doing the line art with the ballpoint pen, I thought I would go back over it with a different like brush pen and like make the line thickness variant. I'd give it a variety of line thickness is what I'm trying to say with a brush pen, but I actually didn't end up going back and doing that because I felt like it would just be too much. Also, using a brush pen, it's so much easier to smudge than the ballpoint pen, and I don't trust myself with that quite enough to go back and do that, but I think it ends up turning out just fine, so that's why I didn't go back and do that. I did actually end up learning that the stitches I draw on with the black ballpoint pen, it does not take colored pencil on it at all, so if you're like me and you go to think that that might work, it doesn't, which it doesn't really matter because in the end, like, it looks fine without it. But just in case you thought I was going to be able to shade that, no, it does not work like that. At least I'll know for future drawings. Now, my absolute favorite part of this drawing and why I picked drawing a lady over a man is the little booby folds above the zipper. That's really what I wanted to draw, I'll be honest. That was my want into doing this prompt or theme, was those little bitty creases. There's something about it. I even think, like, if I draw her again, I'm gonna make that more of a focal point and make it more drastic. I don't know, there's something about, like, just drawing little chunks like that. I think it's very cute. I love drawing chunky women. They're so cute. Ah! I also thought about adding a zipper texture to like the zipper, you know what I'm talking about. I thought maybe adding like even just like lines, but I felt like that would make it way too busy, so I ended up not. So the zipper, it's just, she's a zipper. She may not look exactly zipper-ish, but she's a zipper. She matters. It's close enough. And now onto shading. You can see me bust down my Prismacolor colored pencils, which I have actually a pretty decent set of that I had not touched until recently. For shading the black, I'm going to go in first with a light blue pencil, and then I'm going to slowly ballpoint pen in the white, which does give a bit of a reflection, but at the end when I add sealant, it should take away the reflection and look like a fully, like, it shouldn't stick out, let me put it that way. But I was a little worried at first just putting it in this blue. I'm like, is this gonna look good? I was a little worried I was gonna do it badly. The bottom hand does look a little janky and it looks like I gave her 5 fingers total as opposed to the other hands. I'm just ignoring it. I'll be honest. I don't know. I drew it badly and then I painted it badly and then I don't know what I was expecting. Like I was gonna shade it well. It's just funny. It is what it is. So I'm basically just going to go ahead and layer. I just do one color at a time. I'll do the black and then the red and then I think the blue. But I just do one color at a time for the most part and then slowly build that up. And then if I'm like, oh, I should go back and add something, I'll go back and add something like that. But I first go do a light blue and then I take a red and I kind of help feather out the blue into the black with that red, which I thought wouldn't work. And then I put it down. I'm like, this is great. This is the height of luxury. And it looks honestly really pretty. Unfortunately, my stupid self recorded this at a really bad angle because I'm an idiot. So you're not going to be able to see it perfectly, which I am sorry. I'm stupid sometimes. I really need to figure out a better way to record these. However, I tried my best. So yeah. For shading the blue hair, I just used a darker blue with a bit of purple in it, so that's what I started out with. Now, I am no expert when it comes to colored pencils or anything like that, but if I could give some advice from what I've learned from this drawing and other drawings, is that pick a limited amount of colored pencils for shading and try and use the same colors that are in the drawing. So like if I'm going to use a lighter color to shade the blue hair, I'm going to pick that yellow. And if I'm going to shade the black, I'm going to pick the blue and red. That's basically what I did. I kind of question myself sometimes, but that is my best advice. Honestly, we've talked about this with character design. A limited palette makes the best character design. So in my process, a limited palette will make the best shaded drawing. Just my opinion. I don't need to overdo it. It can just be a good, simple, solid palette. I don't need to go crazy. I'm not Madonna. I'm not. I don't need to be the best. It just needs to be good and decent and all right. The first few steps in the processes of shading is always the most time I question myself. I'm like, is this actually building well, or am I doing this right? And then I really started to question myself when I grabbed yellow and started putting it on the blue, because I was like, this might be stupid. But it ended up working out because my brain was like, this green color is really yellow. If I add yellow in the blue, it'll give it more of a cohesiveness. And I'm glad I trusted my gut because it ends up looking really cool. I personally like it. And then once I realized that yellow looked good in the blue, I'm like, you know what? Let me throw it in the black in between that blue and red to give it more of a slower, a good gradient. And it'll honestly kind of give a rainbow effect. And that ended up tying it even better. I really liked adding that. And my camera cut, I forgot to say, I forgot to hit record, shading some of it. But I used a light blue pencil to shade the light green, and then I put it on the other green and it looked good. I did not think it would. And then I used the yellow on the darker green. And unfortunately, that is all I recorded. I totally didn't record me doing the background and stuff, but this is the final result. I really do love this drawing. She does have her flaws, but this is my favorite kind of sketchbook work. It is just rare that I have the motivation to make it because it really takes a lot of time and patience, and I also generally don't have an undo button. So that does make me have to think through things more. And I like to have to not think when I'm drawing or working. Also, since this drawing, my recordings have been getting better when it comes to my traditional work. So just bear with me for a couple episodes, then we will probably have a better standard from then on. So your patience is appreciated. But I hope you like this character, and I have given her a name. It kind of just spoke to me when I was feeding my guinea pigs. Her name is Roxen, Roxen, and you can find her toy house in the description. You can also find all the characters drawn in the video in the description, and even the characters that are just mentioned. Now, for this drawing, we are tackling the prompt peeking, and I, right off the bat, had a character in mind to be our peeker. The character I had in mind is Zephyrah. We actually have made Zephyrah together in a video before. I will link her character playlist below, but to give you the rundown, Zephyrah is the queen of the sewers. Yes, she is a little sewer dweller. The sewers branch out all over the realm and expand all the time. But she is very jealous of one specific character. That character is Diane. Zephyrah is jealous of her power, the love her people have for her, and the fact that someone so tiny and weak could hold more power than someone of her beauty and fury. For this picture, I want Zephyrah to somehow have snuck into Diane's castle and is waiting to strike behind a corner, glancing preemptively at her victim. However, Diane won't be alone. Diane always has at least one traveling companion. Rarely does Diane ever even walk the floors of her own castle. She is just too tiny and it's too much of a risk for her. So to prevent any mishaps or missteps, she always has one person by her side. For the most part, that person is always Freya. Freya is her right-hand soldier, but since I am yet to finish Freya's design, I decided against drawing her. I also didn't want to add time to this drawing because it already took a while, but this also plays to my favor. Zephyrah is a smart girl. She would strike on a day when Freya wasn't around, and a day that would give her her best chance of success. Maybe a day when Diane was distracted by her son coming to see her. And that leads us to the third character in this drawing, Lightning. Now, if you haven't seen Lightning's character file, I do recommend that video, but Lightning is Diane's son. When he was little, he lived in the castle, but in his older teen years, he takes any time he can to spend elsewhere. So this leaves Diane with little time with him. Thankfully, Lightning is a mama's boy at heart and will make sure to give her at least some of his time. He does love his mother and doesn't want her to suffer on his behalf for the most part. He does have his rebellious moments. But that was my concept idea for this drawing. Now, I had went into it intending for it to be more painterly, but right away I knew I would have nowhere near the amount of time for that. So it's mostly a typical KateKruzan cartoon drawing, which isn't anything bad. I just had expected to have time for shading and like a full render. So I suppose I am a little disappointed with the final in that way. I just wish I had more time, but isn't that just life? When first sketching Lightning and Diane, I first really struggled with drawing Lightning's legs. That pose of walking is just really hard for my brain to grasp, so that really evolves throughout the drawing. I also had a bit more trouble capturing Diane's face structure. I'm not even sure if I got there in the end. I'll let you decide that though. How about that? I'm kind of neutral to it. I've stared at it for so long, so you guys can decide. I also started out with drawing them tiny on the canvas, then realized halfway through lining that that idea was stupid and is way too hard to read from a distance, so I wasted a lot of time with that and had to reline Lightning and Diane. However, since I got the opportunity, I did switch brushes. I thought that my precise pixel brush would help the smaller details in Diane's face read better from a distance, and I do think that that was the case and did help the final result. Now, something I did do to save time, and maybe you noticed it, I used the transparent image of Lightning's sword we made in his character file, and I traced over that. Saving that has been a huge time saver when it comes to his sword, especially since it's such a unique shape and mapping it out takes quite a chunk of time. But I'm so glad I made that reference image, and no, it's not cheating to use something you made yourself. I know sometimes as an artist, I feel like I have to draw everything from scratch, and more often than not, I do, just out of principle. But if you have an easy way of getting something you want drawn, and it's using your own work, just use it. Save yourself the time. It's just so much easier. I plan on making more references of some of my characters' tools or weapons in the future. I may even just draw Diane's crown, like a little reference image of it. I'm kind of tired of that crown. It gets old. Maybe that would be a good idea. I don't know. Maybe it's worth a shot. I can tell you though, definitely, I need to make a pattern page for her dress scheme. Those diamonds would be so much easier with a pattern page. That's something I make often, is pattern pages for my characters. That way I can just copy and paste it or make a brush. Even my sprite on screen, the stripes on her shirt, is made with a brush. And sometimes I do have a pattern page for that, so I sometimes use a pattern page. So I guess long story short, analyze your characters and think of ways you can make it easier to draw them in the future. I also like having like the transparent images of Lightning's sword or pattern pages or whatever if I want to do mock-up drawings. That way I don't have to fully fledge a drawing. I can just like mock it up together and get the idea. It's really helpful with drawings you may not want to commit to. So that is very useful. I like the final results only because I had to time crunch this drawing, and I feel like I persevered through that struggle, and I don't think the results suffered too much. The only thing that was a letdown was that it's just more simple. It's my typical things I do, and I didn't have time to try shading or really add detail to the hallway, which backgrounds is something I really need to practice with and is going to be something I do work on in the future. However, I can't not like this drawing, especially since it's adding to some of my favorite characters' gallery. Do let me know what you think about this drawing in the comments. I'm sure I will return to Zephyrah's gallery again in the future, well, probably sooner rather than later, and do a better plot drawing of her and Diane. But this is a good step in the right direction. Thank you all for watching today's video. Let me know if you stayed to the end by commenting Kenny, Kenny. He is the character you can see behind me on screen. If you want to see that animation, I uploaded it at the same time I did this video, but on my extra channel, KateKruzan Extra. It's actually a bit of a remake of the one I did for Pixel, but it's now just like a private YCH I use for my TV characters. Be sure to let me know your thoughts below on all the art for today, especially my character design. I really like it. And if you have a name suggestion, that's very important. Remember to do justice, love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. I love you. God loves you. Stay safe.